Okay, we should be up and running. So, for those of you who've been paying attention on Discord, this is just a mini stream really to cover a very common issue I've been seeing in Deserts of Kharak, and I know the exact reason for it, and it concerns LAVs and skimmers. For now, we'll just boot up into a skirmish, and I'll talk through what I'm on about while we're duking it out while the AI is. Boneyard seems good. And we'll have a random enemy. Fine. Okay. So, what is the issue I am seeing? I am seeing a lot of people invest in a number of skimmers or LAVs very early on. And while I understand the need to put pressure on the map to prevent those initial artifact grabs, a lot of people aren't considering the impact it's having on their opening, on their economy, and just on them, the effect it ends up having on their mid game. So that's now the major cause of this, of course, is that it's what the AI does. And for a lot of players, the answer to it is to just meet it with spam of their own. And it's not strictly necessary, especially against the AI in this game. So for now, I'm just going to rush to AAVs. And even the opening I'm doing here is actually quite a weak economy opening. Now, why is that? There we go. That's fine. I'm not putting down a waypoint instead of an actual salvage waypoint. Now, we shall grab AAV tech. Considering we're going to be long hauling anyway. Now, there's two reasons against the AI I'm not too concerned about not getting initial LAVs. And that is that I have a 3000 HP base runner out here. And this typically stands true against players as well. They will take the time to kill this base runner before they come here. And that gives me enough time to get whatever I want to counter that initial aggression. And it also means I can play much greedier. Like, right now I would have a support cruiser coming out for this and be moving up with the carrier to get this full efficiency as soon as possible. Just playing it a bit safer because I'm a bit extra on the field. And I'm suddenly wondering if it's actually on hard, because I would be expecting a wave of skimmers or LAVs by now. Hard AI. Okay. So yeah, already at this point I don't need to worry about the LAV aggression because I have AAVs, which will trade quite efficiently with them. But again, it does seem like the aggression's a bit slow, so whether that's part of the change they've made, I'm not sure. But let's come back to the point I'm trying to make. I don't think that in the opening parts of the game you should really have any more than 3 LAVs or skimmers, unless you're going for some extremely cheesy opening which is dependent on having lots of them. This is especially true versus Soban and Coalition, as AAVs will shut down that kind of aggression And I know some people seem to be under the impression that with only 8 armor, AAVs now don't counter those kinds of openings. No, it just means that LAVs can do some damage. Oh no, however will I survive? Let's just delay with that for now. No, there have been changes here. So typically this initial rush would come a lot sooner, and it would be just these LAVs. So the AI has actually been changed to wait a while and then bring a whole set of AAVs with it, which is interesting. So I'm getting a bit too focused on this. As we'll actually get killed with that. Not really a fight you want to be in there, AAVs. You're not going to get much actual damage done, but okay. So again, coming back to the point. I feel players need to be looking more at their mid-game, unless they are going with aggressive builds such as a 1 or 2 PC rush, or if they're going for some kind of weird LAV rush into fighters or gunship rush. The power of Sunder. So improved AI does not mean good AI. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the effectiveness of AAVs. But again, I'm going to be able to outtrade the AI all day. Anyone who has played against it is going to know this. So, a big part of the issue is if you get 5, 6 LAVs, that's a support cruiser you don't have. That's an expansion you don't have up and running. And from what I've been able to figure out, the cost of long distance mining is that it's basically 25%. Okay, so if you're getting 500 from each deposit that you're correctly mining from, you're getting a quarter of that otherwise. Now, when you start hitting the mid-game, when you have the upgrades, when you've got the mobility or the raiding, well, I should say assault packs or raiding, you're going to find that your LAVs and your skimmers are able to have a lot more impact. They're going to be able to skirt around the flanks, they're going to be able to just rush through the back line and actually get damage done. But initially, you're going to find they're a waste. So I do feel like more players need to move away from those very LAV skimmer open heavy builds. It's crippling their mid game, and then that's holding them back going into late game and really having an impact when they need to. Which is just, well, this should be interesting. Yeah, they really want the railguns now, which is which is nice. Let's see. So considering where the AI is currently. Sorry guys, I'm also trying to analyse the changes to the AI. I will admit, it is definitely an improvement. It's less of that hard starting aggression and it's more paced. We'll go with paced. But it's still not going to trade effectively and it's still going to lose in the long run, but hopefully the changes to its resourcing help it somewhat. See, as far as I'm concerned, this is a much more useful time for LAVs. Is once the mainline combat's going on, once you know where your enemy wants to be starting fights, when lines have been drawn, you can start coming around to the flanks. So you'd typically be gunning for a support cruiser over here or something along those lines. Before that, you're going to be running at resourcing which is under a carrier, and you're going to be at risk of AAVs just shutting you down, which isn't much good to anyone. Now, about this point, I should really have chat open so that I can have a look at what people are saying. I'm also trying to avoid bothering with this tech, because missile battery should be an important part of the Coalition Soban lineup, but I'm just reaching the point where I just feel like support cruiser anti-air is just better, where anti-air turrets are just better. And there are just easier ways to have an impact on air. Interesting. Let's see. So let's consider a typical opening. At least for me currently as Soban, I will typically open with 2 salvages to get this maxed out. I will then wait for 600 CUs so that I can get a support cruiser to take over on my main and push up. Now this is a build that I've gotten off Descara, and it allows you to kickstart your economy. Having that much economy very early is going to allow you to move into mid-game very quickly and have quite a strong edge there. And if you aren't expecting any kind of aggression, if you think you're completely safe, you can then transition that straight into a full free base and have an incredibly powerful economy. Now, if you've spent 300 CUs on LAV tech, and then you're spending another 500-600 on the LAVs themselves, it's simply impossible. You are putting yourself economically in one hell of a ditch, and I just don't see how much it can gain you. If a lot of people have started questioning me, or specifically MT asked me, do I always send my base runner out alone? Yeah. If I recycle it, it's 187 CUs. If it's out in the middle of the field and it takes 3,350 damage, that's damage that isn't going into my economy or harassing my economy. Also quite happy with the AA turrets. The thing to keep in mind about AA turrets, they cost 350 and are completely static, but they have a higher rate of fire and more AoE than missile batteries do. Which just seems wrong, but it's how it is. We try not to think about it too much. Still not impressed by the AI. It's sending in such small groups. It's the typical trickle. It will never have the impact that it needs to have to really threaten any kind of defensive position. Now, as far as people who are looking for more information on the exact stats, what have we got here? We have an assault cruiser. It's very important to be very careful of assault cruisers, especially when you want to use LAVs or skimmers. But yeah, the stats. Essentially the way the two weapons work, as far as LAVs and skimmers. Skimmers have vastly higher rate of fire. I think the numbers that I've got puts their rate of fire about 40% higher. The issue that skimmers have is accuracy. Now, where it gets a bit crazy for skimmers is that when they take high ground, they are getting that accuracy to beat the living hell out of you. LAVs, meanwhile, as everyone should know, have got the range advantage and are able to shoot air, which I get the feeling is not going to be such a useful ability with the rise of the gunship, but who knows. But as far as using these, it's all about having boost or rating. You need to be able to control the engagements these are in at all times, as you will bleed so much CU losing these and then replacing them. So we're on BC. really cannot afford to get close to assault cruisers. Ever. Let's get out to tactical bomber. Grab a gunship. Looking good. Looking good. Admittedly, that's a lot of CUs into air defense, but it's worth it. It's worth it. Something I will admit is that where AAVs really let a player down. No armor upgrade? Seriously, AI? Is being able to deal with these kinds of blobs. This kind of blob of LAVs will be able to waltz past, especially with armor level 2. Just generally make a mockery of anyone's backline if they're relying on one or two of those. Now, I think we should be in more than adequate position to break them. Tracking's still a bit dodgy on the gunship, I think. Hard AI, I know, still not really a threat. Oh, no. Alright, that's fine. Oh, 1 second, where is he going? What was that bomber gunning for? Oh, by the way, to all players, to prevent this kind of blobbing, do that. V, direction, spacing. Very handy. That will save you a lot of units. Eesh. Ha! Mini-stream was supposed to talk about LAVs and skimmers, barely managed to get 2 full sentences regarding either. Ah! But yeah, I'd like to see more people focus on getting their economy up and treating strike craft, LAVs, skimmers like you would infantry and CNC. Unless you're going for something cheesy, unless you're going for some kind of outright all-in rush build, you shouldn't be doing it. Even less so if you're Canef, because you basically have blast drones to fulfill the same role. And I think really more players should be limiting the number of initial skimmers and LAVs to about 2. And that's just so that you can poke at flanks, so you can try and bait armoured assault or assault ship tech, so that you can control the match enough without over-investing. And I feel too many players overdo it early on, and they ruin their mid-game chances. They put themselves so far behind that a player like me is able to waltz all over them because they're just so far behind from the get-go. It's not worth it. Now let's finish this AI off. There we go. Now, if you will give me one moment, I will actually get chat and see if I can answer some questions. One moment. Also, be interesting to see how much the AI managed to harvest. Not that much more. That's what, 15% maybe. I will be right back. One moment. Purpose my durpus. So they're not even live. Timing decision for AA. So basically, every time I've had that inkling that I need to put down AA, and now I've said no, I don't want to put 350 CUs into AA now, I've usually ended up being punished by interceptors or strike fighters, where that turret would have been really good. As far as exact timing, that is hard to say, because essentially you've got two kinds of air rush. And really you don't want to go for the AA turrets versus interceptors due to the afterburner allowing them to outrun the projectile. If I were to say anything, you basically want the AA turret down as soon as it passively becomes available. I'd say the best place for it is around your main resourcing, because that's the most damaging place your enemy could hit. If they're going to hit your army out in the middle of the field, fine. That's something you can manage. If you lose your economy, you're done. Also, it doesn't use, the AI does not use salvagers to scout. It's actually sending them across the map to steal your resources. That's entirely why it does it. It long hauls, except for the K'Nef AI, which apparently uses production cruisers with refinery mode. Don't know why, but apparently it's the only one that does. I will admit that is actually one serious problem with losing your initial base runner as Soban. Because you can't get base runner inventory, you can't remove the initial startup, which I believe is a minute. And so if you lose that initial base runner and you're trying to get a replacement one out to do the job as Soban, you cannot remove that initial cooldown, which is problematic, especially as you probably have your initial base runner in the middle of the map. Any other questions? Anything anyone would like to know? As far as the way that the LAVs and the skimmers work, the skimmers do 3-shot bursts, and they do that 4 times before doing a proper reload, which gives them a much more consistent rate of fire. So there's no drop off or sort of anything along those lines. It's literally a relatively consistent just hammering of damage, whereas the LAVs do much, so they do a longer burst of fire each set, but they do fewer of them and then have a long reload cycle. Bit weird, so. My apologies if you can hear me drinking. But yeah, to anyone looking to improve the way they're playing, if you are opening with a lot of skimmers or a lot of LAVs, try repressing that need to have access to a military unit. Don't get the LAV tech, don't get the skimmer tech early, and instead get your economy kick-started. And what you want to rely on instead is your base runner presence or on your carrier's ability to defend itself. So in the case of Soban, you're relying on ALMs to delay. In the case of Coalition, you're relying on the base runner turrets to literally just kill anything that comes too close. In the case of Canef, you're relying on the fact that your carrier is really quite versatile. You've got Ghalcyon grade PDs, you have the missile system, and quite frankly the close combat system only really starts to let you down after level 1, which is really what you're using to defend yourself in that initial phase anyway. So again, I'd like to see more people play a little bit more greedy and go for those more mid-game strategies, and I think that'll open up a lot more options. Just like I say, try not to rush the skim out or the LAV tech. Focus on getting to your mid game, get that economy out, then get into those mid-tier units and ramp up from there. The problem with Gal going economy is not to do with the fact they will get outdone by Coalition, it's that they will be outvalued by Coalition. Ghalcyon can actually get their economy up about as fast. It is just that the Coalition's cheaper units are going to pay off more in that mid-game scenario. How Ghalcyon need to counteract that, again, sending out 1 or 2 skimmers to try and force or bait an early AAV tech to slow down that economy is definitely an option. But again, Ghalcyon have range calibration on their heavy rails, which allows them to outrange. The default range for railguns is 2,100. Range calibrations adds 300 extra meters to the heavy railguns. So you're getting 2,400 range, which is enough that you're hitting them where they can't hit you. And if you use that correctly, you can just out-trade Coalition and Soban railguns. And then you have the interceptor path. If you can get interceptors up, if Coalition even considers air units, you can just pull them out of the sky. You force them to take that AA tech, or they have to play very defensively, relying on those base runner turrets, which hopefully you should be able to pick off or kill off with either skimmers or assault ships, or again siege, which is going to allow you to just bomb them out from range. Now I was going to mention blast drones are a good way of dealing with the AA turrets, because 2 blast drones is 300, single AA turret is 350, so it's still an even trade. If you can get 2 blast drones on top of an AA turret and knock it out, that's a trade in your favor. So yeah, BDs, blast drones, good, versatile tool. As far as Khan and blast drones, I've personally been finding it's much more valuable to have 1 blast drone on the field running interference, so it just wants to scare your opponent and make them think, oh god, he's going to BD rush, oh there's a BD over there, I've got to be careful, there might be 2. And just having the 1, that 150 CU has such an impact mentally. And just playing it that way, I think, is much more valuable than investing over and over in BDs, unless obviously you want to every now and then pull that out so people are still afraid of it, rather than it just becoming like no one does that anymore. It's not a threat. But that brings us back to a very important point with Deserts of Kharak in general, is that builds can work that shouldn't, purely because they're so left field. How do you pressure their eco? The de facto rush build, if you want to get in and punish someone who's going hard eco, is definitely the assault ship rush. Now it can be stopped, and very effectively stopped, by 2 things. One is Coalition turrets, which counter assault ships rather effectively, and 2 is the fact that assault ships have what I consider to be a bug. If a carrier moves too close to them, they bug out and they won't shoot. This means that a coalition player can defensively move into your assault ships with their carrier and basically disable them. There is the argument that Rail Rush should be effective. Unfortunately, the problem is if Coalition go for a Rail Rush off their economy, which is very viable, as Discara has proven a number of times, those rails will basically shut down your assault rails, and you'll be relying really on a heavy rail skimmer mix, which, I don't know, it can work, but again, it could go so horribly wrong. The real issue there is the fact that Coalition can just reactively spam LAVs at you. It's tough there. But that's why I feel Galcian really are about late game. Once you've got range calibration, once you've got interceptors with afterburners, I feel like Galcian are just able to out-trade. And as Empty proved, again, I showed the replay on a previous stream, where he went for Honor Guard Cruiser Rush. He was playing very defensively, very eco-focused. If I'm playing Kol and Soban, I want both AAV and Railtech. They're both necessary, really, because the production queue upgrades are behind them, and they're actually relatively well priced. As far as Galcian and K'Nef are concerned, those initial techs are very expensive, especially when you compare them to Coalition equivalents, and there's not the gains there. When you look at the Galcian and K'Nef tech tree, it basically is two separate tech trees, and you get all of the options you should need on each one. The only exception really is the fact that if you go rail tech, at some point you need to pick up the assault ship tech, because you need armor on your missile ships so that they're harder to snipe. Is it strictly necessary? No. Is it recommended? Yes. But otherwise, yeah, late game you are going to consider picking up those early techs, either the assault ship tech or the rail tech, unless you're looking for a hard tech switch. But generally, I don't want to tech both tech trees. I want to tech into either rail tech, or I want to tech into assault, air, siege. And then the rest of that RU that I save goes into the carrier. And the carrier is incredibly important if you end up going into late game. You've got to think, if the carrier is dead, you're done anyway. And as long as it's alive, what you've invested in it is going to keep paying back more and more and more. And particularly in the case of the K'Nef carrier, once you've got level 5 missiles on it, that is a win condition. If you are able to get that level 5 missile, you're able to put out so much damage over such a long range, you effectively have the best artillery unit in the game. It is, however, quite micro-intensive, so it's a case of weighing up between microing your army and microing that carrier. So something you need to get in the habit of is learning where the highest dunes are. What will normally screw up your line of sight is that you'll have a decent position and then you'll give an attack order. Your units will then move forwards when they don't need to. And then they'll be obstructed by lower terrain in front of them. So it's really a case of taking those highest points, understanding where those highest points are, getting that range calibration on. The other thing about range calibration, it doesn't just affect the unit's range, it affects its view range. It brings heavy rail's view range up to that of about a missile ship, which is pretty good. Which gives them a lot more independence. They're much more able to see and engage targets coming at them. However, it is going to be important that you preface those units in the direction you expect an attack to come from, because their turn speed is weak. But no, if range calibration is used properly, if you kite and sit at that maximum range and use a small skimmer screen, you will find that heavy rails with range calibration used effectively is just devastating. The EMP I don't use. It's too much work. I can see how it would be useful, but it's just too much micro. Getting used to that delay, and it's more. If I would say a specific situation in which you should get it, let's say you're running very rail heavy, and you're holding a hill. Suddenly your enemy pushes you hard. You feel you must get off the top of that dune, otherwise you're going to lose loads of units you can't afford to lose. You pull back, you'd get that EMP shot. You can then fire through the dune, ignoring line of sight. And that would be worthwhile. That could allow you some pretty potent punishes. But it's a really niche situation, and that's tech time and resources into something that may or may not be useful. As far as the Siege EMP, Canef, I always get it because it's really good for the Canef Siege Cruiser. For the Galcian one, I don't bother. It's very rare I find use for it there. You want to be moving, you want to be running away, and you're usually not too bothered with your enemy's position, you're more worried about yours and just bombing them to death. No problem. The whole idea of this mini stream, one, was to make sure I get across to people they need to look at greedier builds, and then just to answer any other questions. So happy to help. To those of you who have shown up, welcome, thank you. Again, just a little stream. I will be getting this posted up to YouTube for anyone who wants to watch it back. And as always, if you're on the Discord, always feel free to send me questions or ask for information. I will answer to the best of my ability. It is my intention to make everyone as good as possible so that they can challenge A Game and beat him for me, because I at this point I sure as hell can't. Someday, maybe, hopefully, we'll see. Anyway, in the meantime, thank you all for watching. Take care.